Another day, another doom and gloom day in Mets land. How's it going, Mets fans, whoever you're a fan of? It's your boy, Wardy, and we're back at it with our latest therapy session. No, I'm not even going to bother to label this as a post-game show. This is not a post-game show. For us Mets fans, exactly what Michael Hoff in the chat says. How you doing? Happy to have you in here. Let's talk about another absolutely godforsaken performance by this New York Metropolitan team, being absolutely dominated by Aaron Nola. You could have slept this entire game, which truthfully, when I woke up today, I thought we had a night game today. I didn't realize it was at 1:10 p.m. Eastern, so I was like, okay, got to get ready for the game sooner than later, just to find out I could have kept sleeping in very late today, and it would not have mattered because you missed absolutely nothing if you're a Mets fan. This offense is now to a problem where it's not only problematic, but changes need to be made. So in tonight's show, we're going to get into what those changes could potentially be for this team and how soon we could see them. But right now, I just want this to be a vent session, a therapy session. We will go through the game inning by inning as we always do here on the WardyNYM channel, breaking down all the latest in Mets land. We are the largest Mets platform, not directly affiliated with the Mets or SNY for a reason. So make sure you smash that like and subscribe button on your way in. Greatly appreciate my new and recurring viewers. The people watching live on Twitter, thank you so much for being here as well. Hit that like, that follow button, that retweet button. But know that, as always, I will only be interacting with my live viewers here on YouTube. And folks, I have a lot to say. I'm going to get hot-headed at times, but I'm going to be frank here when I say that I'm tired of being hot-headed. I'm already tired of being a little hot-headed this early into the season. This was such a lifeless outing by the Mets that I truly feel for any fans that spent their hard-earned money attending today's game, the same way how I felt at Saturday's game where the Mets didn't get their first hit until their final out there with JD Martinez hitting a bomb. Too little too late, as of course the Mets try to rally there in the ninth. It doesn't matter. Changes need to be made. Players need to be off this roster, and you can make an argument to an extent as well with the hitting coach. What should the Mets do with the future of a guy like Eric Chavez? We're going to get into all that as well, folks. And yes, I'm beyond heated with what transpired in this one. I appreciate everyone first chiming in live and on replay. We have play to break down, which again was another absolutely disgusting performance from the New York Mets in this one. I appreciate everyone first chiming in. As always, thank you so much. PB, how you doing? Anthony Doe, great members. Happy to have you all in here. Gregory, how you doing as well? Another great member. To all my live and recurring viewers, thank you all so much for chiming in, folks. We have a lot to get into. What the hell, man? I'm so done, says Danny. I can't watch. We could trade everybody and it wouldn't matter. Yep, Mets fans are getting to a point now, and can we stop? All right, folks, give me 1 second because we have to have people that love to bring politics for some stupid-ass reason into the live shows. So moderators, if you can't do it for me, I'll do it myself. Let's just kick them from the chat. Just give me 1 second, everybody, and then I'm going to do exactly that. Like, seriously, again, it was a brutal Mets loss. We had plenty to rant about, plenty that we're going to get into, innings 1 through 9, everything in between. But if you're going to come in here in the live show, I'm not asking you to do much. I know that we, of course, as fans can be overreactionary in the moment. You guys can say a lot of foul shit that I know you don't necessarily mean. But the one thing where I will always have a zero tolerance with will 100% always be any type of political marks made in the chat. That needs to stop, and that's going to get you an immediate ban where you can no longer comment on the channel. And don't worry, as soon as you make another account, I'll block you there too. So not a problem. So we got that taken care of. Everything's done on that front. Now let's talk about what actually transpired here in this absolute shit show of a ball game. I mean, absolutely ridiculous. I cannot get over the fact that this Mets team is not only so lifeless on an outing like today, and trust me when I say I know that last night's loss was a heartbreaker, especially against a depleted Phillies team where you feel like you're finally able to take advantage of opponent where you know they're a little bit vulnerable. The Mets were not able to do that yesterday. Now today, with Bryce Harper out with a migraine, probably because of Tomasino throwing at a ball at his freaking head yesterday out by accident. Unfortunate that happened, but that probably went in hand with why Bryce wasn't in the lineup today. Trey Turner not in the lineup, JT Realmuto not in the lineup. Doesn't matter. Jose Buto manages to give up 2 runs on just 1 hit because the starting staff continues to walk everyone and their mother. They cannot handle base runners going first to second once again. And we had an offense where Joey Wendell is starting, which again, it's not like he's any better or worse than McNeil because they're both automatic outs. They're going to provide nothing for you offensively or defensively. Brett Beatty, of course, continues the labor that we saw there. Omar Narvaez does not need to be on this roster whatsoever, but same thing as McNeil and others, the only reason why they are is because of the money that they're being paid. And it's easier said than done parting ways with these guys. But emphasis on the parting ways. The Mets need to make changes. We're all done. We're all fed up. There's nothing, and I truly mean nothing, to justify giving playing time to certain guys currently on the roster. What does Joey Wendell provide? What does Jeff McNeil provide? When Francisco Alvarez is back, what does Omar Narvaez provide? Steve Cohen has shown a willingness in recent years to eat dead salary if need be, if he knows it'll make the team better, especially in a year for a Mets where they want to give a leash to their younger players if it is warranted, whether it's because they played great in AAA level or AA, or because, the guys are performing so low at the major league level, and in a year where we're just trying to push for playoffs, why not give some of these kids a little bit of a leash? That is what I say now to David Stearns and Steve Cohen. I am fed up. I am done looking at this entire roster at the moment. Their current lineup, there are multiple players on this team that even at their absolute best still do not justify being on this roster. McNeil at his absolute best does not provide enough for you. Joey Wendell at his absolute best certainly does not provide enough for you. Omar Narvaez at his best does not provide enough for you. We all saw the graphic on SNY today, folks. Francisco Alvarez, when catching Mets pitchers this year, has an ERA just above 2 for those Mets pitchers. For Omar Narvaez and Tomas Nido, they both have an ERA of over 4 since, of course, Francisco Alvarez has been down with injury. The inconsistency has been stagnant on both the offensive and the defensive end for this Mets team. And you look at them right now, this is a team that has talent, that has gotten plenty solid pitching performances. And while, yes, we lead the league in walks, and yes, we probably lead the league in giving up stolen bases, the Mets have been in tight ball games what feels like every single day for north of a month now, and they've lost a good portion of those tight ball games because their offense is the biggest to blame. We can sit here and yap all we want about Jose Butto not commanding the strike zone, but at the end of the day, Jose Butto still very much kept the Mets in this ball game. Yohan Ramirez somehow has a Houdini act and escapes a 2-on, less than 2-out jam there in the 6th inning, and then the Mets from there, if it isn't for Jake Diekman walking everyone their mother that we saw later on in the ball game, they were okay for the most part there that we saw with the command. The offense has continued to be the biggest problem with this team, and it's not going to change anytime soon, which is exactly why we need to have this discussion today. We need to break this open. I need to ask every single one of you guys, what should the Mets do? What should the proper turn be? What should the proper counter be? Because right now there is nothing, and I truly mean nothing, to justify this current roster configuration. And miss me with the nonsense that, oh, it's early in May. Yes, trust me, I am 100% that glass half full guy. If you guys know me on the channel, you know I'm not only a diehard Mets fan, I keep up with this team as much as humanly possible, like any other diehard Mets fan. And I tell you how it is. And I've told you all along that this Mets team, regardless of their highs and lows, will still be pushing for playoffs and will more than likely be a buyer by the trade deadline. Those things still hold true in my mind, especially in a year where I know David Stearns can be cutthroat and he will not give too long of a leash with certain guys before making his decisions. We've already seen him make some abrupt early decisions between the bullpen and certain aspects of this roster. I want to see more of that. I think we are going to see more of that, but how much more of a leash do we give to some of these guys? That is the great question that we have right here. Because right now, I don't know how you justify giving at all any type of leash right now with the way that so many of the guys on the current roster are performing. Guys that are being glaring holes, and for anybody as well, just to throw this out there, Francisco Lindor has yet to have a hit in this series. Francisco Lindor has barreled baseballs better than I feel any other batter that we've seen outside of Pete Alonso that we saw yesterday. Lindor has put on some really quality at-bats and has gone criminally unlucky. If you look at the numbers through Baseball Savant, expected batting average through the roof throughout this series as well. Shout out as well to one of my awesome followers there on Twitter for relaying this to me. Has a 400 expected batting average right now, over this past stretch. Rightfully so. He's been barreling baseballs hard. Lindor has not been the problem. The problem has been guys that simply have no idea what they're doing when they're up there at the plate, and we know who those guys are. Big problems here in Mets land right now, folks. And yes, it's early in the season. It doesn't mean we can't have a justified discussion when the Mets go down in a putrid manner in the way that they did tonight. And yes, Aaron Nola is a stud. I've always been one of those guys that have admired Aaron Nola's game. I even defended him heading into free agency that I said he's going to get a bag, rightfully so. And he got a big payday by the Phillies, but it's outings like this which again show you why he's being paid the big bucks. But even with Aaron Nola being a Cy Young caliber player out of the NL this season, it does not change the fact that this Mets offense has been so inconsistent, has been so anemic for the vast majority of the season outside that little 12-3 stretch. And I shouldn't even say outside that 12-3 stretch, because even then, even during that stretch of baseball for the Mets, they were still not playing great baseball. They had many games where they were not able to hit until later on, until after the starter was pulled from said ball game. Or if they did hit, it was because they hit against a lesser starter that, of course, the Mets were able to take advantage of. Any guy with competency that's going out there to start is going to do well against the Mets, and this is a broken record that goes well beyond just the 2024 season. We have a lot of donations I want to get to, so let's do exactly that, folks. And honestly, today might be one of those call-in show days, folks. So we're going to see. It all depends, because I also don't want this to be too long-winded of a show today either. So if we do not take callers today, do not worry. We will be taking them in the near future. I promise every single one of you. This is one of those that is beyond frustrating, to say the least. I know you guys will love the vent, but let me answer some of your questions that I have currently in the chat. We'll break down the ball game inning by inning. We'll get into the pitching report. We'll get into one of our amazing sponsors on the channel. Shout out to both Sora MLB and BetUS. BetUS, of course, has you covered with all your sports betting needs. Make sure to check them out by clicking the link down below today, folks. We have some big games tonight as well on the NBA slates. The Knicks look to defend the Garden, home court there for Game 5. It's an even series. Now it's a best of 3. Let's see how the Knickerbockers do. Let's go Knicks, baby. Shout out to my Knicks fans out there. If you know, you know. And, of course, we also have a big game against the Nuggets and the T-Wolves. I've hammered the Nuggets there on the spread the past 2 games, and I've come out with plenty of winnings. Well, again today, we'll find out there. Will Ant be able to respond and dominate? Again, big matchups that we'll get into in a little bit. But Scott with a $5 holla. Scott says, it can't be easy to be a starting pitcher knowing you're going to get 0 run support. We walk guys because they know they have to be perfect. Oh, you're 100% right. Scott, I think that's a great point you bring up. These Mets pitchers know that there is such little wiggle room for error, to the point that just by walking a couple guys could be the difference maker in a ball game. Jose Buto giving up 4 walks, which is inexcusable. There's no denying that is a problem. But what is certainly a bigger problem is this Mets offense being as inconsistent as one can possibly be, to the point that, again, even if Jose Buto is going to give you, say, 6-7 strong innings, it isn't going to matter, because the Mets are going to leave him out there to die. They're going to roll over like they've been every single game for how many games now. And what the more frustrating aspect to this all is, and again, Scott, thank you for the donation. Michael, I'll get to yours in a second, and others, is the simple matter that this is a Mets team that had showed early life that we saw in the 12-3 run, that was exciting with those rallies, was playing entertaining baseball. Again, I'm not asking you to win every night. I was never asking for such a thing. All I'm asking is for you to play entertaining baseball, to give us Mets fans a reason to get up every day and watch your asses. Right now, there's nothing to justify watching them outside of some strong pitching performances. Outside of Christian Scott looking brilliant, but Christian Scott is going to be the first rookie in MLB history at this rate to have a sub 2.5 ERA and have 0 wins on the season, because he's not going to get a lick with this Mets team with the way they're swinging the bat right now, and have been for a stretch of time. Michael, thank you for the $5 holla. Michael says, not like he'd be the savior, but is there any realistic shot that they call up Acuna? I'm beyond done with McNeil. I know a lot of people are, and here's what I'll say about this. McNeil is not a David Stearns pickup, right? This is under the Billy Upper regime when he extended him. I promise you, David Stearns doesn't extend Jeff McNeil. That's number one. At least not to that degree properly. And 2, Luis Angel Acuna has struggled with the bat at the AAA level this season. But what he hasn't struggled with for the most part has been strong defense and has been elite speed on the bags. Luis Angel Acuna is enough of an impact player with his pure athleticism alone to rightfully argue giving him a shot sooner rather than later. Because again, how much worse can things be for you? All I would say, and to play devil's advocate, maybe to not have Acuna being called up, is you just don't want to hurt his young development. That's the only thing I could think of, because the Mets have unfortunately done a fantastic job in recent years on hurting the development of their young, higher echelon of prospects. Headlined right now by a guy by the name of, I don't know if you know him, Brett Beatty, for example. Brett is still struggling mightily to get where he wants to be as an everyday major leaguer. We know the defense is there. That isn't the problem with Brett right now, but it is the offense on a night-to-night basis. And when you have an offense that is collectively as dog shit the way that this Mets team currently is, that is where you're going to have bigger problems, because these vets are barely able to get out of their current ruts. So why should we expect an inexperienced Brett Beatty to be any better, right? Not everyone can have the pure talent, athleticism, and charisma the way Francisco Alvarez does. And Alvarez is a clear a obvious hole without him in this lineup and without him as our backstop at catcher. Defensively, there's a night and day difference. And I love Tomas Nido, but I'm still taking Alvarez every day on the week on that front between the two. I would love Nido as a backup, not complaining there, and to get Omar Narvaez the hell off my team. But outside of that, Francisco Alvarez not only shows in the stats as I referenced earlier, again, a 2-year rare or so, when he's the one catching to a 4+ when it's Narvaez or Nido, around the same amount of playing time this season, shows you how much of a difference maker Alvarez is with the starting staff that we know is filled with some reclamation projects, guys trying to bounce back after down years like Severino, for example, and all their biggest bugaboos to this point has been their walks, that and giving up stolen bases. Alvarez helps tremendously in both those regards when he's right and when things are going great. And then you add in the offensive element. Francisco Alvarez is a guy not only with the great power that he has behind that bat, but the type of infectious personality that he has both in and out of that clubhouse. Those things make a difference, and the Mets need more of a youth movement right now. They absolutely do. Alvarez helps in that regard, we know, and I cannot wait to see him back. But still, this Mets team right now looks in complete disarray. They look completely lifeless, and they look like they're still hung up out of that loss yesterday against the Phillies. It looked like today, they looked like a team that is still gutted from yesterday and had no clue how to wake up today. No one took their morning coffee. No one pounded espresso. Everyone went out there lifeless. Dragging their bats up to the plate is truly what you thought they were doing with the way that they were barely swinging them. Yoshima, thank you so much for the donation. Something has to give. So angry right now. You and I both, my friend. Thank you for that donation, though. I greatly appreciate it. I'm worried there's no discipline at the plate whatsoever. There is barely any discipline. Barely. And again, that's a big problem. Zach, thank you so much for the donation. I appreciate that. Zach in the chat says, good observation before any starter who's anybody is lights out against this offense. If we somehow miraculously sneak into playoffs, we're almost certainly first round exits. With how the team is currently operating, 100%. This is what I mean, though. If the Mets crack playoffs, things will have gone differently. I don't think the Mets will be able to tread water all season long to somehow get to above 500, currently 3 games below 500, 10 games back of the Phillies in the NL East. I don't care about the division. That means nothing to me. Not once have I thought at all about the Mets pushing for the division this year. It's never going to happen, more than likely. But what can happen is, again, them pushing for that wild card spot. But if the Mets do make playoffs, it's hard to envision them getting there without finally starting to hit against good pitching, right? It's impossible really to get to that point otherwise. I mean, we'll find out, right? We're going to find out together, Zach. Thank you for that donation. I appreciate it. But yes, 100%. If they get into playoffs anytime soon, we know what the result is more than likely going to be, unless they have something that they can prove to us that they haven't. Cohen is a loser. He needs to go. This is a nonsense that needs to stop. You cannot sit here and blame ownership when you have to realize that Steve Cohen had to adopt everything that the Wilpons have done over the past how many decades without an analytics group, without having any type of competence to properly run an organization. We can blame a lot of people today, but Steve Cohen is far from it. And I'm not going to sit here and listen to that nonsense, because to suggest that Steve Cohen doesn't want what is best for this team, one, is silly. He's not the one single-handedly making all these decisions, folks. Owners have a say, but unless you want him to frickin' be Jerry Jones there with the Cowboys, that's probably not going to bode well, especially for Steve Cohen. That's a baseball fan, but is not a baseball expert. I'm going to go on a limb and say there's probably 0 owners in Major League Baseball currently that are experts and students of the game, the way that a president of baseball operations or a GM that those same owners hire are, right? That's why you hire these people to be in these positions. David Stearns is not the reason why the Mets have had as many problems that they've had so far this season. If anything, we should be applauding David Stearns, because if it isn't for him, this Mets bullpen is absolutely cheeks, and their rotation is not thriving to the degree that it is with the type of pickups that they made. Making the best out of their current options is huge, and I commend them for that. But what I don't commend them for is this nonsense continuation that we have seen with this offense not getting the job done on a night-to-night, day-to-day basis. It is disgusting. It needs a change, and yet it hasn't. And there are birds chirping like a mofo around me, and of course I got every window open, so I apologize in advance if you hear some birds chirping. If it gets obnoxious, though, let me know, and I will try my best to close the damn windows. Just ridiculous. Professional Certified Hair, thank you so much for the donation. My 8-year-old nephew is better than Joey Wendell. Yes, the bar is that low, my friend. The fact that I feel confident that I could stand up there and make a difference tells you all you need to know. The bar is that low. And here's the thing. I had a discussion with someone on Twitter earlier. Okay, Joey Wendell is starting today, so what does that mean? Well, Joey Wendell, okay, he may be an actual better immediate option at the moment than Brett Beatty and Jeff McNeil when it comes to the bat, because at best, Wendell can slap it for opposite field and give you a couple hits. But the counter is, how much of a difference does that actually make when the Mets have no chance on bringing those runners over to second base if they're not stealing, or let alone, of course, hitting with runners to scoring position? Forget it. It's not going to happen. Let's see. John, amazing member of 9 months. Thank you so much for being here. Trade Marte, McNeil, and Pete. Blow it up properly. The Mets are not going to blow it up to that degree right now. I assure you. Trust me, they're still going to push for making playoffs. The only way the Mets blow it up to that magnitude is if they are so far out of the playoff range as we inch closer to the trade deadline. That's the only way to justify it. And the vast majority of the fans are on the wavelength of saying, hey, it's time to blow this entire thing up, including Alonso, even with him, of course, as we know, in his walk here. And speaking of Pete Alonso, just for 1 second, folks, and then I will get on to breaking down inning by inning, because I know you want me to talk more about this than just this godforsaken ball game and what transpired in it. But the latest updates on Pete Alonso, for those that don't know, some context came out from Joel Sherman today, and this is why I didn't jump the gun on the reports that, oh, Pete Alonso turned down an extension with Boris, that this is what's going on. Pete Alonso turned down a 7-year, just under $160 million extension with the Mets last season, mid-season, prior to the trade deadline, and prior to him hiring Scott Boras this offseason to be his new agent. So for anyone wondering, did Scott Boras have a say in that extension being denied? Did the extension offer actually happen? Well, Joel Sherman said that, he believes, that he thinks that it was offered at this time frame. Again, I did not like that Joel really wasn't able to clarify things well. That didn't sit well with me. Again, and trust me, it only means so much at this point in the season from something last year. But for people that are wondering, okay, was this a Scott Boras decision? Far thing from it. Pete bet on himself, rightfully so. I don't think that's a wrong thing to do, first and foremost. And anyone saying that Pete Alonso isn't deserving of a lick of anything close to that contract, that's fine to have your opinions. But from a market value perspective, last season, mid-season, Pete Alonso, he knows that his market value is certainly better than 7 years and just under $160 million on extension. Pete Alonso knows that if he just has a prototypical 40-plus home run season this offseason, he will get north of $200 million. And to think that he won't is honestly very surprising to me, because how inflated this market is. And with Juan Soto in there, I assure you that there will be teams that will be targeting Alonso heavier because they missed out on a Juan Soto, for example, because Pete does stick out as one of the biggest free agent names this free agent class. And if he just gets rolling the way that we know Pete Alonso can, we will find ourselves in bidding wars, and that's where you'll have to come to the decision at what point do we put a hard line in the sand. Again, this was under the Billy Epler regime where that contract extension was offered and denied by Pete Alonso. So just more food for thought on that front for people that are unaware, that didn't hear anything about that prior or whatever it may be. And again, apologies everybody. How is the audio? How are the visuals? How is everything sounding? Basically all I want to know is, are you guys getting really bothered by the birds that I'm hearing chirping right now, or is everything okay? As long as everything's okay, we'll continue to roll without a problem, folks. And I do want to break down now, inning by inning, what transpired in this one. Promote all the prospects. I mean, Sanders, I know that us fans want to naturally do that. I will just tell you that there are obvious reasons why that doesn't happen. And the main obvious reason is that you don't want to rush up guys and hurt their development, because the Mets have done, unfortunately, a good job on doing that with some guys in years past. So that is the counter when it comes to everything. But certainly, yes, I absolutely say you should be calling up guys to a degree. I think Luis Angel Acuna, this is a time where you make that rightful argument, especially. I don't think that's a bad argument to be had. I really don't. And even for the people saying, what can Acuna provide that McNeil can provide? Acuna, at best, is a contact hitter that struggles to go gap to gap, but he's also like 20 years of age or so and has so much more growing to do, and he comes from a family where there is an excitement level there, and for obvious reasons. As an athlete, I'm taking Luis Angel Acuna every single day of the weekend on Sundays already. The legs is a difference, and for a Mets team that can use legs, that can use athleticism, that can use a fucking spark of some way, shape, or form, that's where Acuna falls. If Drew Gilbert was healthy right now, the Mets would probably be having more of that discussion, even with the outfield configuration that they have at the moment. Then you look at Jet Williams. Jet Williams is another thing as well, folks. And this is where we may have a little bit of a greater problem. And then I'll break down the game, folks. But we got a lot to say here. Jet Williams, Luis Angel Acuna, what do these guys have in mind? What is the connection between these prospects for the Mets? They're top prospects, yes. But what is the problem? They're all known for being high contact hitters that, of course, do fantastic jobs in getting on base. I'm all for OBP guys, but we have a greater problem with the Mets right now because we are steering farther and farther away from a contact hitting sport in Major League Baseball, and we are steering more and more into doubles and gap-to-gap hitting. That is 100% what's going to win you ball games more often than not. Yes, you want the contact ability sprinkled in between there for sure, but I will say I do have a slight level of concern with the Mets prospects as a whole, knowing that while we have Drew Gilbert and Ryan Clifford especially, Clifford has yet to show his power this season in the minor league level, but Ryan Clifford is deemed as potentially the best power hitter in this Mets organization in the minor leagues right now. Those are guys especially that we need to blossom and hopefully develop well, because you cannot be reliant on these contact hitters. They're not going to do enough for you, but what they can do, especially in the interim with these younger players, is provide a spark to hopefully get a fire under this team's ass and hopefully, again, find a recipe for success in some way, shape, or form. Now, final thing I will say before we break down the ball game, now this is the final tidbit I have for you all. Eric Chavez and the hitting approach. Eric Chavez was not the Mets hitting coach last season. The Mets struggle mightily, we know. He goes back into the hitting coach role. The Mets are struggling mightily. They had that great stretch of brilliance, 12-3, not much since then. So how much blame do you put on a coaching staff? I think you can put enough blame on this coaching staff to rightfully argue that changes could be made to a degree. Carlos Mendoza is far from my concern. Mendy is not the impact. Mendy is not the problem with this offense at all. If anything, you have to give a tip of the cap to Carlos Mendoza on how he's managed this Mets team certain nights. Yes, some of them have shown his rookie manager, but others I've been very impressed with. And little things like yesterday, for example, pinch hitting Tyrone Taylor instead of Brett Beatty there, and that lefty move by the Phillies bullpen, thinking that they're going to have the lefty-lefty matchup for Beatty, who can't hit a lick right now. Those are the little things that we're seeing with Mendoza, where he struggled with in the first couple series against the Brewers, and then from there point on. So Mendoza's growing as a young manager. I have very little complaints on his front and what he's been doing, and also how he approaches the media and the fans. I think that's all great. Much better, night and day difference, where you're actually getting clear-cut answers at times versus getting a whole lot of nothing every time he's out there, Mr. Buck Showalter. But Mendoza, not the problem, in my opinion. But I think if you're going to start to nitpick, if you're going to start to pinpoint beyond the roster itself, where yes, the roster is 100% the biggest focal point, it is still a little bit on the coaching staff here. Because these guys, this core group, we should be an above 500 team right now. With the pitching nines that we have had, we have wasted so many strong pitching performances this season that the Mets just hit to their competition in those games. They would not only be above 500, they would probably be at least north of 5 games above 500. We can count. There have been many games for the Mets this season in which they have not been able to get the job done, not because of the pitching not getting the job done, but it's all been on the offense. And Hauser, and talking about Adrian Hauser just briefly, everybody, I do not know what's going to happen on that front tomorrow. Let me know if you guys find out any different comments there on SNY and post-game coverage. Hauser was warming up for a long period of time in this game before not pitching at all. So you have to wonder for Adrian Hauser, why is his ass warming up in the pen as much as he did today if he's expected to start tomorrow? I do not know for certain if Adrian Hauser will be on the bump tomorrow, but I can tell you much right now. If Adrian Hauser starts tomorrow in Philly, do not expect the Mets to win. Expect a third straight loss against the Phillies. This is not me wishing it. This is not me hoping it. This is just common sense. Adrian Hauser has got his absolute tits lit against any solid baseball team, let alone a Phillies team on a heater right now, still dealing with ailments, and could get a JT Realmuto back as soon as tomorrow. Explain me why I should have more optimism than I currently do with this Mets team at the moment, with how they're not only configured, but how they're expected to match up into tomorrow's game. Very frustrating, folks. Very frustrating. Yes, 6 blown saves on the season so far. That is correct, Scott. But now let's get into it. Dave, my absolute beauty of a member, great friend. Happy to have you in here, Dave. Dave, next time that we actually have an enjoyable post-game show, I'll show off some of the stuff you got me, brother. I know we didn't do that yesterday, and I apologize, but I'm happy to have you in here, no less. Alan, thank you so much. Genuine great members. Appreciate all you chiming in live on a replay. And also, guys, we're halfway to 100 likes, so if you could help out your boy by smashing that like and subscribe button, greatly appreciate it, and thank you all so much in advance. Really does mean a a lot, folks. But yes, no highlights today. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure that one out either. Why would I show any highlights with the way that this Mets team's playing? There was none to show. Literally, they cannot hit a lick at all. But let's break down this game, this little stretch. And again, I apologize to my replay viewers. I just want a quick game recap. That was it. Again, there's a lot that goes in hand with these post-game reactions. I want to be genuine. I have a lot that I need to say. And in games like this, I don't want to just rip off this thing right away when it's a whole lot of just what the Phillies did and none of what the Mets did. And it's going to be quick and done in 2 seconds. I want to talk and break these down further with you all. And let's just take a quick pan, everybody, as we see here. And then let me just get everything double checked at the moment. But if I take a quick pan now to the hitting stats, actually, let me make sure that this is off while I do that. Okay. When we take a look at the hitting stats, folks, look at this absolute nonsense for the Mets, okay? In the first inning, Jose Butto with a 1-2-3. In the second inning, Jose Butto with a 1-2-3 inning. In the third, Jose Butto gives up a hit to Rojas, a walk to Schwarber, a walk to Stott, and then Bohm with an RBI hit by pitch. So for a second straight day, Alec Bohm gets drilled and drives in a run. That's just fantastic, isn't it? Bohm drives in the first run of the day. Marsh with an RBI walk. Again, the 2 runs Jose Butto gives up today are not because of hits, but because of fucking hit by pitches and walks. Pardon my French. I do apologize for that, everybody. In the top of the fourth, after we're down 2-0, another 1-2-3 for Butto. In the fifth, another 1-2-3. He had retired 7 straight batters as Jose Butto exits today with the final line of 5 innings, 1 hit, 2 earned runs, 4 walks, and a couple strikeouts, and with the ERA at 3.08 on the season. We'll get into more on Butto and how he looked today overall with our great pitching analysis from my great friend Isaac Rothman. Let's see here, but the results haven't been there. Francisco Lindor says that the offense has been strong, but the results haven't been there. Hitting is contagious. We just haven't found that groove. It's a tough one for sure. Lindor is right. Lindor is right, and especially in the case of him, I don't know if he's right fully with the rest of the team because guys have not been barreling baseballs hard consistently the way that Lindor has, especially today or over the past couple of games, but he is right that hitting is contagious. When the Mets are playing at their absolute best, everyone's firing on all full cylinders. Harrison Bader, your 9-hitter, becomes an absolute stud because, again, they feed off of the energy. They feed off of the proper movement when things are going in their manner. They also feed the same way when things aren't going right. And the problem is that when the Mets have lost tight games consistently for north of a month every single day, that is why they're not in a groove right now, because they're still in this disgusting funk that they can't snap themselves out of. Late game heroics, walk-off victories mean very little when you're losing the very next day, playing the same way that you were leading up into what would have been a loss if it wasn't for your late game heroics, right? Against lesser relievers at times. I digress. Let's break down more of this ballgame, shall we? Jose Butto, we'll get into more on his analysis in a minute. In the bottom of the fifth, Pete Alonso with a strikeout. Terrible strikeout by Pete. Love you, Pete. Disgusting strikeout. He was up 3-0 in the count and ends up striking out because Aaron Nola does what Aaron Nola does. In the top of the fifth, Yohan Ramirez comes in. He gives up a single to Bohm. Marsh with a single as well, but somehow has his best Houdini impression and escapes that jam unscathed. In the bottom of sixth, then we see Tyrone Taylor with a single, and that would thankfully break up not just the no-hit bid, but the perfect game outing that we saw there by Aaron Nola. Aaron Nola had a perfect game going into the sixth inning, but thankfully Tyrone Taylor does what Tyrone Taylor does, and that is hitting baseballs, getting on base. While a lot of things haven't gone great in Mets land, one of the few bright spots for this offense, more often than not at times, has been my boy Tyrone Taylor, who not only plays strong defense in center, left, and right, but also gets on base at a strong clip, again, for a high fastball hitter. And I shouldn't say high fastball, I mean just fastball in general. He loves to eat those fastballs. We know that with Tyrone for sure. That's just part of his game. No less, folks, we get to the seventh then. Jake Diekman comes in, and you know what Jake Diekman does, everybody? If I haven't told you already, hope you've been following the channel, because when we broke down when the Mets signed Jake Diekman, I told you were going to have a ridiculous love-hate relationship with this man. And the reason why you're going to have a ridiculous love-hate relationship with this man is simply put, Jake Diekman averages a 5 to 6 walks per 9 every single season in his major league career. Color me surprised. Jake Diekman walks everyone and their mother today in the seventh inning. He walks Schwarber. He walks Castellanos. Thankfully, after a Mets challenge, because this officiating was god-awful, just like this Mets offense so far this series, they have to go to a challenge to make sure that Schwarber is clearly picked off there at second base, trying to go back to second. The Mets have been great with their pickoff moves lately, so at least they're making improvements on that front, but still, the fact that they need a challenge for that to happen shows you how piss poor this officiating continues to be, not doing the Mets any favors whatsoever. No less, another walk, this time to Bryson Stott, 2 on, 2 out there, and it is out of the ball game that we see there for Mr. Jake Diekman. In comes Jorge Lopez, who gets Alec Boehm to ground out to end the inning unscathed. In the bottom of the seventh, Starling Marte kicks off the inning with an opposite field single. Francisco Lindor with a 107-mile-per-hour line out. Yes, and this is what I mean, folks. It is important to evaluate the quality at bats of players before going the lengths of saying, oh, they suck, or oh, they had a terrible day. If you just box score and you say Lindor went 0 for, Alonso went 0 for, that's fine, but understand some context. Today's a good example of context with that, especially in the case of Lindor and others. Nimmo hit some baseballs really hard today, too. Many Mets hit some baseballs hard today, so that was another frustrating thing. When they were having their lackadaisical at-bats, in which they were, they had a few bright spots in there, and when they did, they were lined out right to center, right to left, right to right. They weren't able to get in the gap, and again, that's part of Aaron Nola's game. Even if he's going to give up hard contact, he's going to do his best to make sure that's in the location of where that defensive alignment is going to be. And he did a fantastic job on that today. Aaron Nola deserves a huge tip of the cap. I know I didn't emphasize it much. I don't want to emphasize it as a Mets fan, but Nola was fantastic today, and it shouldn't be discredited just because this Mets offense has been putrid consistently for as long as they've been. Nola has a strong start regardless on where the Mets offense is. Even if they're on a heater, I still expect Aaron Nola to have a solid start against the Mets because he's a very good right-hander. We all know this. No less, the Mets end up down that inning on just 3 pitches because Pete Alonso, first pitch swinging double play, ends the inning. You want to hear the crazy thing, folks? The Mets managed to have a 3-pitch inning where the offense is down like that while giving up a hit. Not giving up a hit, but having a hit themselves thanks to Starling Marte. That feels impossible. How can you manage to have a 3-pitch inning where you still get a hit? Leave it to the New York Metropolitans to figure out such nonsense to, in fact, happen. We then get to the 8th inning, a scoreless outing there for Lopez, if I'm not mistaken. In the 9th, my boy Sean Reed-Foley did not have a good outing today, unfortunately. 3 hits. He led 3 consecutive hits, led to a run. A 4th consecutive hit made it 4-0. And Sean Reed-Foley, unfortunately, with a bad outing tonight in the top of the 9th. It wouldn't matter. It's not like anything was going to change with the offense whatsoever. Jeff McNeil lucks out and manages to get himself a single-turn double because of a little bloopy to left that Marshall wasn't able to read properly. Slides, can't make the catch, and he gets the second. Marte gets on with a single, but again, it doesn't matter. Look at the at-bats. Look at how they got on base. It's too little, too late once again for this Mets team. Fortunately, it wasn't a 10-0 loss. We couldn't hit with runners in scoring position to save our lives. If it was a 10-0 loss, again, it wouldn't make a difference. If it was a 1-0 loss, it doesn't make a difference. I think the only thing you could say, it stings more when it's a tight loss versus when it's a blowout. When it's a blowout, you're like, all right, scrap that. Just didn't have it today. Nothing was working. Nothing was firing on any cylinders. You're going to lose. Let's move on to the next one. No, the Mets were losing the majority of this ball game 2-0. Up until the 9th inning. In my opinion, this is still a 2-0 loss. What does that mean? Yet another game where the Mets lost the game basically by 2 runs, where if they just provided any competency with their bats, they're not only in this ball game, but they more than likely win. Not only this is what stings even more. When the Mets lost 2 out of 3 against the Braves aren't hitting to save their life right now. The Braves are not nearly hitting on the cylinders that they want to, at least against the Mets. That's why the Mets were able to take advantage to an extent and win that big series early on a month ago in Atlanta against those Braves. To drop 2 out of 3 when you had quality pitching performances by Christian Scott again, nothing to show for it, is beyond frustrating. Now you enter the Phillies, who didn't even have Schwarber in the lineup yesterday. Yesterday, the Phillies were without Schwarber, were without Trey, and were without JT Realmuto. Today, they were without Bryce Harper, they were without Trey, and they were without JT Realmuto, and the Mets took zero advantage of these opportunities. These losses don't only sting because of how they're losing in these fashions, but also because they're losing now when every game counts, 1, and 2, the next time that you match up against these Phillies later on this season, the next time that you match up against the Atlanta Braves later on this season, they're more than likely going to be firing on all full cylinders better than what they currently are. And this is a Phillies team that's still red hot right now when they don't even have a healthy lineup. They're just finding ways to win. They're taking advantage of their opponents, what they're giving them. They took full advantage of the Mets. They're reading the playbook. That's why Marsh stole 1, if not 2 bases yesterday. They're doing the little things that they know they need to do to win, and the Mets are doing anything but. So yes, as a Mets fan, we have these Jekyll and Hyde occurrences. Of course, I'm going to have nights where I'm freaking out so ecstatic about a win. I'm going to tell you, I just hope that they can be consistent with this. But this is yet another game where the Mets are showing that they can be anything but consistent with this offense. And that is why, in some shape or form, changes need to be made. As we now take a look at the pitching outing, what we had for Mr. Jose Butz and everyone else, Wardy, do you think that they will consider firing the hitting coach? At least I do think that they will, should these ailments continue. But it's tricky because the Mets have two hitting coaches. They have Barnes and they have Chavez. Basically, they have like Chavez and then they have Barnes. It's like 1A, 1B for their hitting coaches, right? Not every team has more than one hitting coach to begin with. The Mets have two. And look, clearly their salaries are a waste of money at the moment, because you're telling me we're investing dollars into not one but multiple hitting coaches just for us to not hit a fucking lick with a salary at the salary in which we have it right now, one of the highest, if not the highest payroll in Major League Baseball, and we cannot hit to save our life? That is where it falls on the coaches a bit. Because, yes, you expect more every night out of Lindor, out of Alonso, out of JDM. Again, we know they've been providing some offense lately. This was a tough one where no one was hitting whatsoever, so I don't want to just nitpick the core group today. We have major problems with the length of the lineup as well. But the point still stands. This is a Mets team that we know should be performing to a better caliber than what they are right now. And this is where you can make the rightful arguments and say, hey, changes not only need to be made, but really we should start to be nitpicky. We should say, okay, this is a bit on the coaching staff. So what will David Stearns do in response to this? Is he going to make a drastic decision like Zach Scott did as Mets GM in 2021 as acting GM and fire Chili Davis a month into the season and have Pete Alonso trying to rip his head off? Yes, all those things are accurate, and yes, it is true. Thankfully, Pete did not hurt Zach in any way, shape, or form, but he had that crazy look in his eye like he was about to. Again, giving you an idea where some of these players are emotionally as well in their young careers. I know that was a couple years ago, but still, Pete's always been an emotional guy. When the Mets, parted ways with Buck, we heard rumblings that Pete was basically trying to knock down the door there at Billy Epler. So again, that's a greater problem too. You can love these guys and have great relationships. You can go to bat for them, but there's a way to go about it too, which I think is a rightful argument. Either way, what I'm trying to get at is that this Mets team, we know that, yes, they're far from perfect. We know they're going to have plenty of frustrating losses this season, but we still know that how they performed so far this year, with all the talent that they do have on their roster, they should be an above 500 team right now, and it's because of this offense, only because of this offense, that they are not in that position. Yes, we could blame one or two games on the walks, Jose Quintana not doing anything to benefit us, but for the most part, this Mets offense has 100% been the main reason why they have not been able to perform to the way that they have. And I appreciate everyone that's been chiming in live on our replay. We have a total of over 900 concurrent viewers right now between Twitter and YouTube. Thank you guys all so much for that. Make sure to hit that like and that subscribe button if you're watching on YouTube. And if you're watching on Twitter, make sure to follow me here on YouTube, where you guys, of course, can interact with me. We're going to be taking live callers plenty this season. I promise you all we will be doing that. We'll be coming out with a lot of awesome content, hopefully just exciting things to discuss, where I don't have to have a fucking therapy, pardon my French, I'm really pissed today, where I have to have an effing therapy session, what it feels like on an every night basis because of this team. Daniel, thank you for the $10 donation. Daniel says, Wardy, 5-game homestand, average 175 runs, game 2.2, 175 averaging 2.2 runs, an OPS of sub 530, only 3 home runs. We struck out 43 times. This is against teams in our division. Oh, I believe it. I 100% believe it. The Mets are not good at Citi Field either. If it isn't a Mets team when it's too little too late back in 2019 when you're rallying, when you still can't make playoffs because Edwin Diaz in that bullpen did nothing to help you, of course they're going to struggle at Citi Field. Citi Field, I will argue, should have been made differently to begin with. I love Citi Field. I love the ballpark. We all know that. But what I don't love is that is not a good park for hitters, especially in the case of the Mets when you don't have proper configuration with your offense on a year-by-year basis. Citi Field is more of a pitcher's park than anything else. Yes, the ball at times can carry out there, but we also have seen, especially early in the year, when you don't have good weather, everything falls on the freaking warning track. You're always screwed. I promise you, if the Mets were a West Coast team, if the Mets had a ballpark not in New York, their offense would not be the same. That's 100% a fact. But again, I'm not going to use that as an excuse because every team goes through different ailments. Every team goes through different circumstances. The Colorado Rockies, yes, it's very difficult to pitch in cores. We all know that. That's just something that they unfortunately have to deal with because that's where their location is. Cincinnati, same applies. But even then, you're still going to get great outings from when he was there, Sonny Gray, Trevor Bauer, Luis Castillo, Tyler Mahle. Nowadays, you, of course, have Hunter Green, the flamethrower. You have Nick Lodolo, who's a great Salpo, somehow gave a 4 earned his last start against the Giants, which pisses me off, messed up my parlay, so F the schmuck, not going to bet him again for a little bit. Point I'm trying to make is, yes, the Mets also have some things that don't go in their favor, but every team has problems. Every team has things that they are dealing with. So we still cannot use this and say, hey, this is the reason why. It may be a factor, but they need to be better, and they haven't been. And right now, we're all frustrated, rightfully so, and I just want to see change. I just want to see some changes be made. I'm not expecting anything drastic, but just do some little things to get a fire under this team's ass, wake them up a little bit, and let them know that this stuff is not going to fly, because right now, we're normalizing it to the point where we're not only letting it fly, but we're letting it be this commonality where we basically should expect the Mets to not hit on a day-by-day basis. You know, right when we started to get this sliver of excitement and hope that the 12-3 run could be somewhat sustainable in the sense of not their winning ways, but in the way of how they're approaching the game day by day. Because the Mets did a great job throughout that 2-week stretch of playing entertaining baseball and providing quality at-bats. Even then, though, that is not something that we're seeing at all consistently with the Mets right now. And yes, there are some guys that are getting unlucky like Lindor and others with the expected batting average and stuff, but you still need to be better. Pat, thank you so much for the $5 donation. I appreciate that. Wardy, no need to stress this team is doing what it has built to do, not win, just compete. And again, it's frustrating that you're not terribly wrong there, Pat. But again, I think there's a very rightful argument that this Mets team absolutely should still be above 500, and they would be if they just had any competency with an offense that when you look at the offense, guys, how many of us can comfortably sit here? What's this effing cat doing around me, you schmuck? What can we say about this offense? Once Francisco Alvarez is here, especially, they have depth. We have a lot of weapons here. We do. And I don't think that this Mets team is far away from being a very entertaining baseball club every day. Again, I'm not expecting you to be the best, but entertaining enough to be in ball games and, of course, provide quality at bats. We're just not seeing that right now. I do think that we can get there. We have players to make this happen, but there is a universal bigger problem at the moment, and that's where I'm truly wondering, is this where Eric Chavez comes in? Is this where Barnes comes in? Because something needs to be had, something needs to change. Let me get to also everybody. Thank you so much for all the donations. Greatly appreciate that. But let's get into the pitching report here briefly. Let's hear from the sponsor, and then, of course, we'll get on sooner than later to wrapping up the show. Again, thank you guys so much. We're 20 likes away from 100 in the live show. Continue to smash those buttons. Thank you all so much. And again, happy to have you all in here watching live on YouTube, watching on Twitter, breaking down the latest in Mets land. They lose another heartbreaker. This wasn't even a heartbreaker. This was just a no-show offensive outing where if you had any commitment to watching the Mets today, I apologize, like me, because we just wasted our time, as we do a lot of times, unfortunately, as Mets fans. But shout out my man Isaac Groffman with the pitching analysis as always. Let's get into some good tidbits. Was there anything good to come out of the pitching today? Let's break it down. Jose Buto's arsenal today was as follows: forcing fastball 43% of the time, the sweeper 18% of the time, sinker 15% of the time, and the slide piece 12% of the time, changeup 15% of the time. For the second start in a row, Jose Buto was unfortunately unable to deal with, he was unable to command the zone well with those early walks, but he was able to correct himself, and that is something where I will give a lot of credit where credit's due. Jose Buto has had many starts already this season where he has not looked his best. He has struggled with his command, but he has been able to keep things afloat and keep the Mets in the ball game. Even going back to LA against that ridiculous Dodgers lineup, he was walking all the big boppers, but it was a smart way for his way to avoid bigger contact, harder contact, game barreled hard. Like, Buto was able to work some magic then, and today, again, while he was far from the best that we want from Jose Buto, he's still a starter where I can't sit here and say that he's the reason why we're losing ball games. Outside the walks, he's really not. And again, we shouldn't have to worry about the fact of Jose Buto allowing a couple runs when the bigger matter should be the offense doing nothing to even feel you have any confidence level in coming back in a ball game like this, because I had none. Yesterday, again, we've seen the Mets have great back and forth. That was another thing that was so frustrating about yesterday's loss, because the Mets had so many things going right in the sense of their core group. Pete Alonso, Francisco Lindor, doubling, getting RBI doubles. JD Martinez with a 3-hit day. Things were going in your favor, and you still lost and still did nothing with it. I digress. We saw Jose Buto again in the third inning. He struggled a bit with the control. He wasn't able to land that changeup, and when you don't have that changeup, you're going to have some problems for Jose Buto, who has used that changeup in his favor at times so far this season. He started pitching better when he was able to land that changeup, of course, and ended up having a 60% whiff rate, so above average there, though, above 50%, which is what we like to see. The sweeper was also working today, too. He only had 2 whiffs on it, but it was still productive for the most part. So overall, it was a perfectly fine performance for him. Control, again, just continue to be an issue for Jose Buto. So everybody everybody in the live chat, people watching here on Twitter and, of course, on YouTube, my loyal subscribers. Let me know on a scale of 1 to 10 where you rate Jose Butto start today. Because for me, with an outing like this, with an offensive showing like this, I'm going to give Jose Butto a solid 6.5 to 7 out of 10. I think he's in that range. Again, we didn't get length from him, but it didn't hurt the Mets. That's really the thing. Yohan Ramirez was still able to eat an inning or so, eat an inning or two for them, and get them out of jams. Jorge Lopez, again, wasn't fantastic, but he wasn't the worst. Pardon me, Jorge Lopez was fine for the most part, actually. Sean Reed-Foley, of course, was the one guy in the pen that stuck out where he was giving up runs. Jake Diekman did everything he could to give up runs, but thankfully the Mets were able to get out of that. But I'd probably give Jose Butto around a 6.5 to 7 out of 10 on the start today. Again, not great, but still, I can't view him as the reason why we lost today. Farthest thing from it. Ramirez looked nasty with the sinker today, which was great. The sweeper combo as well to get out of trouble. That was huge for him. The sinker was up 20 inches of horizontal movement, something to make note of there with Ramirez and his arsenal. Jake Diekman, however, had terrible mechanics today. They were completely off. He was releasing the ball way too late, causing him to miss down and away to lefties and down and in to righties, which is why he was walking everyone their mother there in that inning. Jorge Lopez, again, continues to be the workhorse of this bullpen. Jorge Lopez has had as many innings as any other reliever in Major League Baseball, and he has done it at a quality rate so far. Yes, Lopez's last time out there wasn't great, but he was solid today, and we appreciate that. You know, that we also forget, and this is a great point from my man Isaac, that Lopez, like many relievers, of course, used to be a starter, so he can go multiple innings. This is a guy, similar to Reed Garrett, similar to Sean Reed-Foley, similar to Yohan Ramirez, can eat 2 innings for you at a comfortable clip, as long as, it's not back-to-back days per se. SRF, he's been a workhorse for sure, and the velo, unfortunately, was significantly down today, which went in hand with why he was giving up the type of contact that he was. But he gave up the first 2 runs of the season. His first 2 runs he gave up of the season, one of which was a double on a 170 expected batting average. So unfortunate luck there for Sean Reed-Foley, just the reality of baseball. Us Mets fans know all about batting good luck. We've had many things go our way, especially in the first half of 2022, where we got really lucky with putting the ball into play. It's always important to put the ball in play, of course, but then we've gone really hurt as well, where we've barreling baseball's hard, everything's going right, and you just cannot hit a lick. And that certainly, for some guys at least today, was the case. Headlined by Lindor, headlined by Nimmo, among others. But that is the latest, folks, on the pitching report there with everything going on with the Metsies. And now to pan back into this one and get into the latest, I do want a negative 10 rating of the Mets. I don't disagree with you there, my friend. Do not disagree whatsoever, everybody. But, folks, I do want to pan here just for a second to hear from today's video sponsor, as always, our great friends at BetUS. And in case you guys and gals don't know BetUS, of course, my sports bettors, you probably know. But if you don't, BetUS, of course, is the best sportsbook out there. Make sure to check them out today by clicking the link in the description down below. That way you too get 125% bonus on not your first, not your second, but your first 3 deposits, all with our great friends at BetUS. And tonight, folks, we have some big matchups. We have the baseball slates, of course, that we did emphasize yesterday, and I am curious to see how some of those baseball slates are looking at the moment. So let's take a look, because I'm doubling up on the Baltimore Orioles. I still like them again today against the Toronto Blue Jays. Yesterday, I had the Orioles, and I had the Tigers, and I had the New York Rangers, and I went 1 for 3 of my picks. Rangers unfortunately lost there. The Orioles unfortunately lost by 1 run there at the end of the game, and the Tigers just won. So they were all tight games for the most part outside the Ranger game where they gave up 3 there in the third to the Canes. Still pisses me off as a Rangers fan, but I'm going to push that bias aside for the moment. But I really want to double up here. And I said that yesterday in my postgame, and I'll say it again. Orioles, minus 165 on the money line. Love that. I trust my O's more than I trust Toronto right now for sure. And I'm not just saying this because I love the Orioles. I'm saying this because I love the Orioles because they're really effing good. That's why I love them so much. And that's why they're my team to watch here in the AL this season for obvious reasons. The Tigers as well, I'm doubling up on them against the Miami Marlins. How can you not? Any team against the Marlins, you have to. The Nationals today is an interesting one against the White Sox. I really like the Nationals in at least one of these games. So I might as well, they do have a game going at the moment, I believe, because they have a doubleheader, but they do have a game too where it's a coin flip. So I'll leave you guys, I'll let you guys kind of pick and choose on that front. That's a tight one for sure. But these are the 2 games at minimum that I really do like again today. The Nationals, if you want to throw one in there, you can. But I'm actually going to go, and I'm going to hop now to the basketball slates because we have 2 massive games tonight. Of course, you got the New York Knickerbockers looking to defend the Garden at MSG against those Pacers. They're a minus 115 favorite right now. Me personally, I may throw the Knicks in this one, but I honestly am going to be focusing far more on the live betting odds for the Knicks in this matchup, depending on how they're looking. I need to see how gassed they look because we only really got 6 healthy guys at the moment with all the injuries, and OG Anunoby out is literally a death sentence for this team, so I hope that they can just propel, and of course, Jalen Brunson, Josh Hart, Dante DiVincenzo do their thing. That's what we got to pray and hope for right now. Need Deuce McBride eat some quality minutes. We need Precious Achiuwa to be impactful. We need Alec Burks to not be a bricks machine, and we need defense there in the corners especially to stop those effing threes that feel like they happen every single time that the Pacers drive up the ball. But still, Knicks love them, but if there's a pick that, honestly, between the two, I don't love either of these right now, guys. So let's just stick with the baseball. What I will tell you with the NBA picks tonight, personally, I'm much more of a live betting fan than I am hammering money line or spread prior. Because the Nuggets right now, I've hammered them in the last 2 games because they've been the underdog. They were at +4 on the spread, and they were +2.5. They won both those games. So there was justified reasons. I like to personally wait until the team that I think is going to win, as I'm watching in the Nuggets, every NBA game, every team is down by at least 10, 15 points at some point in the ball game. For the most part, it happens more often than not, as long as it's not a complete blowout throughout the whole course of the game where the other team is getting curb stomped the way that unfortunately the Knicks did in Game 4 in Indiana. But I'm going to go with here Nuggets and Knicks, 2 teams that I have my eye on, but not until we really get the game started and we focus on the live betting. So that's why I implore you all, if you're a sports bettor out there, you want to bet responsibly, make sure you do exactly that. Of course, bet at your own risk by signing up down below with our great friends at BetUS. But what I will tell you again is, if, say, the Nuggets are down at the half by 5 to 10 and their money line is more even, if not plus odds, I say absolutely consider hammering for however much money you want to utilize, especially the spread. When you get in the fourth quarter as well, lines fluctuate heavily if it's tight games in the NBA. So that's where you really want to hammer and try to take advantage of those crazy odds. I've hit many times on hammering +250 to all the way to +1,000 on teams being down when you know there's enough time in the basketball game for them to come back. And NBA defense this year is night and day from what it used to be. So you're going to see guys drain threes a lot, and a lot of guys just give up at times. So Knicks, Nuggets, big games tonight, but I'm going to emphasize here just the Orioles and just the Tigers for the sake of focusing on these slates in particular. So we're going to go O's, we're going to go Tigers there, and we're going to go there as well. We're going to place that and get that corrected. There you go. That's going to be 10 to win 27 on that one, if I'm not mistaken, or right around. So again, everybody that tails these picks, of course, bet responsibly. Good luck to you all. And again, let's see how these games do tonight, say the least. You must log in. All right, I'll log in a second. I don't know why I logged me out, but those are the picks I'm going with today. I'm doubling up on them. And again, make sure you guys and gals bet responsibly as always with our great friends at BetUS. But as we pan back into this one now, folks, before we wrap up the show, Nuggies took it personal, as they did. This is what I mean. I was texting my buddy yesterday, just slightly off topic because we're like an hour into the show, so it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter as much, at least, because you guys are here because you want to chat up with me too. But my Borna texted me, shout out to him, of course, he covers the Padres, great friend of mine. He's like, the T-Wolves sold. I'm like, I know the T-Wolves sold, but let's not discredit the Nuggets. Why are we acting like the Nuggets just make so much sense as an underdog their past 2 games against the T-Wolves? I know how good Anthony Edwards is, but I also know how good the Joker is. I know how good Jamal Murray is. Why should we discredit the reigning champs just because they're playing a team that came out of a hot series where Anthony Edwards was a big difference? It didn't make much sense to me, and that's why everything was working for the most part. Light as hell. Who's sick of Lindor first pitch swing? I'm sick of Lindor first pitch swinging too, but I will say Lindor was not the problem today, especially if you looked at his at-bats. Let's see. Today, I want to DM Trevor May, bring him back for one last big one. That'd be cool. Shout out to Trevor May. We love Trevor May, friend of the channel. He was on the channel in the offseason. Excited to have him back on the channel again. But yeah, Trevor May, we love him. I would take Trev right now. But again, the Mets, pitching-wise, the Mets don't need too much help right now. They just need offense. Trevor Williams and Seth Lugo's killing it being starting pitchers. Yes, they are. And I'm beyond happy for both of them. OG is not playing. No way. Yep, he's still out. OG's probably going to be out for the rest of the series. I don't have a lot of confidence in OG returning at this rate. That hamstring injury is no joke. And the Knicks, who are already without OG Anunoby, are without Julius Randle, are without Bojan Bogdanovic. Man, that's a killer. And Mitchell Robinson. If the Knicks were on full cylinders, I have the utmost confidence that they could go toe-to-toe with the Celtics. and breeze past the Pacers. But the Pacers may very well go on to potentially win this series because the Knicks being down. And the Pacers, the only reason why they're at where they're at is because of the big stars of the opposing teams being hurt. Not a chance in hell the Pacers beat the Bucks in that first round if both Dame and Giannis are healthy. And I will take that to my grave. I feel very strongly about that. Same way I feel that the Pacers win this series, it's directly in hand with OG Anunoby being out, us not having Mitchell Robinson, and us also not having little impacts like Bojan Bogdanovic, huge player off the bench right there. And of course, Julius Randle, one of our best players as well. Would have been nice to have him. I think the Knicks very well could be a championship caliber team even without Julius, but you need those other pieces. And right now, I have major concerns with how much farther they can go without the guys being too gassed. We know Tibbs is going to drill them in the ground because he literally has to, but this is where it's going to come back to bite the team in the ass, unfortunately, when you have these kind of ailments. Hope I'm wrong, but that's just how I'm feeling. And how I'm feeling right now, too, folks, is that we're going to wrap up the live show. So I want to thank you all so much for taking the time to watch live on a replay. Roughly an hour of talking about the Mets scoring 0 runs today. That's how we know that you guys are sickos for listening, as we have 1,000 concurrent viewers combined with both YouTube and Twitter right now, and just shows you how much of a sicko I am that I somehow have a pleasure in doing this for a living, talking about this team when they have been killing me more often than not. Truthfully, since I've started watching the Mets, not watching the Mets, even though that's true, since I've started covering the Mets, I've seen far more disappointment and heartbreak than I've seen victory and excitement. So that's why I cannot wait for a time when the things are reverse roles and we can be excited more often than not each night. The way that we know Braves fans are, the way that we know Phillies fans get, the way we know Dodgers fans get, the way that we know the Astros when they're right, excluding so far this season, and many other teams in Major League Baseball. Wardy, am I going after? Who are you going after at the trade deadline if I had a choice? Too premature to say, rookie. Way too premature. Very early at this rate. At this rate, we will never hear the theme song of this channel. Yep. You're never going to see the you're never going to hear the post-game jingle with the way that they're playing. Hopefully that changes tomorrow, though. I'm not banking on it. The Mets face Ranger Suarez tomorrow. Taijuan Walker, Game 4. I have a feeling the Mets lose tomorrow, and they beat up on their former friend, now foe, in Taijuan Walker. They salvage the series, and they make us think, okay, you know what? We're 3-4 games below 500, but we had a big win against a former Met. We're feeling good, and then we're going to get our teeth kicked in again next series. That's currently where I'm at. Again, I pray that I'm wrong, but Ranger Suarez has been absolute nails, and the Mets have been an anemic offense. The writing's already on the wall tomorrow, so we'll see what happens. But guys and gals, that is going to do it for the live show. Luke, my absolute beauty of a mod, happy to have you in here. I'm so sorry we're wrapping up the show now, but I appreciate you in here. Post-loss. Yes, this was a post-loss, but again, thank you all so much for taking the time to listen. We'll be back live tomorrow, as always, so stay tuned for consistent coverage on all things Metropolitans here on the channel. But until then, have a great rest of your night, day, evening, whenever you're watching this. And this is your boy Wardy signing out. Head in there, Mets fans. We're going to get this through together. We're going to get through this 162 through together, even if it isn't easy, as we always do.